Welcome to today's episode of Buildings Hub Live, where we spotlight the changemakers and technologies leading the charge to electrify our built environment. On our podcast, we tackle the multifaceted issues and complexities facing building electrification, from space heating and water heaters to electric cooking and beyond. On today's episode, we'll get cooking with Noah Cordoba, Kitchen Electrification Lead at the Building Decarbonization Coalition, and Ram Narayanamurthy, Manager of the Emerging Technologies Program at the Department of Energy's Building Technology Office, as we discuss the future of the electric kitchen and the transition to induction cooking. Here's your host, Atlas Project Manager, Kim Latham.
Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're on the West Coast. And welcome to the second episode of Buildings Hub Live. My name is Kim Latham. I'm the project manager here at Atlas Public Policy, and I have the pleasure of being today's host and moderator. For today's episode, we'll be discussing a topic, personal to many, their kitchens, particularly the transition to efficient all-electric cooking. While many may think that cooking with gas is the way to go, I'm here to tell you that there's a safer, cleaner, more climate-friendly option that more than does the job, and that's induction cooking. And more on that a little later. Before we jump in with our guests, a quick note about Buildings Hub. We are a one-stop shop that pulls together the latest policies and programs and studies and publications and market data. But really the most important thing that we're doing like today is we bring together the leading voices of our community on these live shows to discuss advancing building electrification and decarbonization. So if you like what you hear today, go ahead and check out Buildings Hub. And we have a link provided in the video and also in our chat. So for today's discussion, we are currently live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and we absolutely love it when our listeners get involved. So if you have questions, please view us on YouTube, and you can use the Q&A portal to submit questions and fire them away throughout this conversation. So without further ado, I am joined today by Noah Cordoba with the Building Decarbonization Coalition. He's on the screen waving to us, and Ram Narayanamurthy with the Department of Energy's Buildings Technologies Office, which you may hear us just use the acronym BTO throughout this conversation. And he's just waved as well to our listeners. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm excited to just jump right in. So Noah, it's great to have you here with us. You work with the Building Decarbonization Coalition. You specialize in kitchen electrification, so you are the right person to have on today's episode. Can you explain to our audience, like when we say kitchen electrification, what does it mean, and how does it fit into the larger conversation about building decarbonization and building electrification?
Absolutely. Well, it's great to be on with you guys. Thanks so much for having me. Like you've introduced, my name is Noah. I'm with the BDC, Building Decarbonization Coalition, and I specialize in kitchen electrification. I spend all day thinking about it. And it's really important to define what kitchen electrification is, because for a lot of people who aren't in the building decarbonization world, it might be a new term. But very simply, kitchen electrification is the idea that we're transitioning from gas and electric kitchens, or dual fuel as sometimes referred to kitchens that are all electric. And it's the transition away from gas in cooking. It's a vital piece of decarbonizing a home entirely and doing like the whole home decarbonization. And it's super important to talk about because kitchens, as some people might be aware, are either the first thing that people electrify in their homes or the very last, because unlike like space heating and water heating, people have really strong emotional connections to cooking with gas because they can see it, as opposed to their water heater, which probably sits somewhere in the basement or somewhere else.
That's where mine is too. And I've been told that even though we're going to learn a lot about a kitchen electrification, I should have said like our cooking might not improve after this, but we really hope listeners take away what kitchen electrification is. So Ram, equally great to have you here today with us to represent the Department of Energy's BTO office. You manage a lot, I'm sure, going on over at the Department of Energy. How does kitchen electrification fit into your portfolio? And what is your team at BTO doing to really facilitate what Noah just described, so that transition to more energy efficient and all electric appliances?
So thank you, Kim. Yeah, as you said, right, we work on a whole host of different technologies, whether it's lighting, whether it's working on plug loads. We do a lot of work on energy efficiency, which reduces customer cost. But then we also work on a big part of the portfolio is actually working on heat pumps, right? Figuring out how to get heat pumps to the other half of the country that doesn't have heat pumps today.
What about cooking, though, too, right?
Yes, we do. We do cooking too. So that includes. So once you do the heat pumps, then the next step is looking at our appliances, which includes cooking, as well as other appliances like laundry, right? And then within the cooking area, we've done a lot of work over the past several decades on more efficient cooking, reducing fuel usage, whether it's electric or gas. And lately, a lot of our work is actually focused on electric cooking appliances, right? Induction cooktops, um, electric cooking in general. So, one example, just last week, we were looking at our portfolio, and we have some of the projects in our portfolio where one of our portfolio projects is actually looking at how do you get to 120 volt induction cooktop. And it's actually a pretty big breakthrough, because if we can get there, that means that we are not only doing electrification, we are working on customer resilience, so that when the power goes out, that we can still cook. And we're also working on how do you actually reduce customer costs by being able to manage when the power is used, so that we can optimize for time of use rates that are more prevalent, that are becoming more. So we look at it from a very holistic perspective. It is, yes, it's an appliance. Yes, there's an electrification angle, but we want to make sure that we also reduce energy costs for the customers, and we also make customers' homes and buildings more resilient.
Yeah,
So,
I saw Noah like clapping on the screen when you said that about 120 volts. So I know we want to get into even the nit-grit details, but I'm going to switch it over to Noah, it's literally in his title. So can you explain what Ram was trying to say around induction cooktops? So there are a lot of different technologies, and I know both of you could answer this, but I'm going to ask Noah here. Can you tell us about induction cooking? A little bit, like, what are those different cooktops? What has your experience been? And why is it so important that, now we have Ram also talking about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So induction cooking is one of the technologies that we talk about when we talk about electrifying a kitchen. On the residential side, it's most of the picture, but on the commercial side, it's one piece of many. Induction cooking, for people who aren't familiar, it's different than gas, which is a flame, or electric resistance or electric coil, which uses electricity to get a coil hot and then get your cookware indirectly hot as well. Induction cooking works by using electricity to actually create a magnetic field directly above the glass surface of a cooktop. And for those watching, there's a picture on the screen right now that illustrates what I'm talking about. But that magnetic field connects directly to the cookware that is magnetic, and it heats it from within by making all the little molecules in the cookware shake and create friction, and that creates heat. Which in cooking, that's all you want. You're just looking for a way to get heat. Induction cooking is super exciting because it's available to people, and it's also really high performing. So as a renter, myself, who's somebody who has one of the barriers to fully electrifying my kitchen is that I don't have control over my appliances. It's my landlord. But as a renter, I cook with induction every day using countertop hobs, which is kind of similar to the one that was in the picture. And I love cooking on induction specifically because for me, hobs are accessible. So it's a way for me to not cook with fossil fuels. And then I'm someone who's really into like technology and like little gadgets. And so for me, cooking on induction that way is fun. And it's also modular. So like portable countertop cooktops that are more accessible to people cost wise, and in terms of just like being able to use them as a renter. You can take it off the counter, store it, put it away, use it when you want. So it's really easy in that way. But induction as a technology is available in a bunch of different forms, both on the residential and commercial side, in countertop models that can be moved, and as well as things that are like installed directly into counters, or full-size ranges that just slide in similar to how a gas or standard electric range would.
Yeah, thank you, Noah. I'll say in preparation for this, I went on a real YouTube binge where I just watched a lot of reviews. So if folks even want to go deeper than what Noah described, there are lots of great reviews about different cooktops. So, but part of those reviews, they talk about some other things that I'll point us to Ram about. So at BTO, you're supporting some of the commercial development and innovation for these technologies, and particularly induction cooking and making it scalable. So, how has that been going, Ram? And what's got you excited?
So yeah, I mean it's been going great, right? Especially when we are looking at innovations that are, again, I mean we want to provide benefits to the customers all around, and the fact that we are seeing some of these new innovations come out is actually very, very exciting. We are addressing gaps in the product range for electric cooking, or cooking electrification, as Noah defined it. And part of it is looking at, hey, what are the last bits of cooking that we need to be able to electrify, right? So when we look at commercial cooking, there are a few things that we are interested in. Woks, for example, high power woks, how can we electrify them? So looking at innovative technologies that can be used to do that. Because once we are able to get a full product range of kitchen electrification tools, then it then becomes much more easier for the consumer, for the customer to make the change. One example I'll give you, right? I mean, so many. I think the latest is that 16% of homes have instant pots. Instant pots are a great cooking tool, and they are a key element of cooking electrification. We do it. I mean, I think my wife has three, right? We do it because it's more convenient. That's the beauty of some of the cooking electrification, the appliances that we can bring in, right? There's convenience, there's control, there is safety. Induction cooktops, for example, don't burn fingers, for example, right? So making sure that we can provide customer benefits with these new innovations while still being able to assist in the decarbonization transition. And that's what we focus on.
All right. I think you touched upon something, and I want to pull on that thread for Noah and Ram, where you talked about a topic near and dear to me, because it really affected the Asian American community. And when we talked about kitchen electrification, and you mentioned it briefly, it was woks. And sort of maybe what is that obstacle for those that maybe don't quite understand what you were trying to say, and what have been some of the solutions that have really come forth out of that? So Noah's nodding his head. I'll put him on the spot.
Sure. Yeah. So wok cooking is a wonderful, wonderful cooking technique that people all over the world use, especially in different cuisines that are having specific things to it, like Chinese cooking as well. And wok cooking in the residential and commercial spaces is super different. In a lot of cases with wok cooking, you're trying to achieve really, really, really high heat, so that you can get something called wok hay, which is I think it's like the breath of the wok. It's a really, really high heat cooking technique. But wok cooking in terms of electrification in kitchens is available in many instances. But as Ram will note, there's always more that we can be doing, and there's more products that we'd love to see into the market. But on the residential side, there are countertop induction woks, actually. And induction woks, for people who aren't familiar or haven't seen them, have, unlike a flat wok or flat induction cooktop, induction woks are kind of a semicircular design that the wok pan fits directly into. And they are available actually right now for residential and commercial applications, as companies like Full Wrap and Garland that have countertop models and stuff that can be installed directly into counters. And actually, one of the most exciting things for me is seeing recently Microsoft in redeveloping or electrifying one of their campuses in Washington State had worked with a commercial manufacturer to manufacture a really high-powered commercial wok. So much so high-powered that in the first design, they actually had to scale back the power on it because the cooks that were trying to learn how to use it for the first time were burning things because it just got too hot too quick. And they was actually getting the pan like red hot. So just a testament to the power of induction, but also the fact that we're developing technologies that we're trying to make work for different audiences that are new to it.
Love hearing that. Ram, did you want to add anything too around the commercialization of it too?
No, I think Noah covered it really well, right? I mean, it's getting to that next stage and filling out the product gaps, and I think for many of us in the industry, getting wok cooking electrified is almost like the ultimate goal, because if we can do that, we can pretty much get most of the cooking processes electrified. So
Yeah.
it's
I'm not
exciting.
biased, but it is, one of the best cuisines.
I would agree. Yes.
Delivers every time.
Yeah, all the time, year round. So I know we kind of went towards commercial and cooking at the restaurant side, but there's also like the personal experience, right? So Noah, there are negative electric cooktop experiences that we hear about, and people just really want to cook with gas, like you said earlier. They want to see the flame. So what kind of education or awareness can factor into changing the perception of electric cooking?
Sure. Well, when it comes to cooking with electricity, most people think about electric coil, or they think about any type of like red hot element that's heating a pan. And they think that's the only thing that exists when we think about electric, because that's what most people have, or they have experience with, or they cooked it with it in somebody else's home. And we know that for a lot of people, that's perfectly fine, and electric coil does the job, and it does it well for them. But for some people, there is there's like the piece about electric coil being a little bit slow to respond, and some people have negative experiences and associations with electric because of that. But one thing that we want to really do when we're talking about kitchen electrification is educate people on the difference between electric coil and induction. So because induction uses magnetism to heat pans directly, we eliminated a lot of those pieces that people had bad experiences with electric resistance in the past, like it's slow to heat, or it's really dangerous because it's a hot coil that you could burn yourself on. And so that misconception that electric and induction are the same thing is one of our biggest barriers, and one of the things that we have to overcome in order to fully electrify. And so that's what I work on a lot in consumer education, and people all over the country are creating experiences for people to get hands-on with induction, to really understand what it is. And we're seeing that once people really, one, they're aware of induction, and then two, they know what it is, they can like understand it and explain it. And then three, they get hands-on with it. They're so excited because it's a completely different experience with electric cooking, quote unquote, that we haven't had a lot of exposure to.
Right.
Yeah, and I would add, right? I mean, I think the reason people like cooking with gas or with the flame, is because of the sense of controllability, right? When we had the old coil stoves, right? They're not very controllable. You wait for a while for it to heat up, and then it overheats, and you don't know when to turn it off. And even after you turn it off, it's still hot, right? So the cooking process still keeps going on. So I think it's a sense of controllability that people yearn for with cooking over a flame. Yes, there are specific processes, right, that might require a flame. But if we can replicate that sense of controllability and make people comfortable that, hey, they can manage the cooking process, which you can do with induction cooking, that makes them much more comfortable. I think of it as, 15 years ago, we all had thermostats on our walls where you had to punch like 10 buttons to figure out what temperature, how to set your home, right? And now we have smart thermostats where you can actually talk to them and tell them, hey, what you're most comfortable with. So it's that kind of a transition. It's still a thermostat, but it's now much more customer centric. And that's really where I think induction cooking comes into play. It's much more customer centric, and being able to be more tuned to the customer requirements and needs versus the traditional electric cooking systems that we had. Same thing with the Instant Pot or any of these new appliances that are coming on, right? It's being driven by the fact that the consumers feel like they actually have control over it. It makes your life easier and lessens the chance of burning food on the stove, which is, for me, that's the biggest advantage. I don't burn things as much anymore.
Love it.
Sure. One final note that I'll talk about when it comes to consumer preference with cooking with gas, or quote unquote, now we're cooking with gas, is that a lot of consumer preference for gas comes from decades and decades of gas industry marketing to promote gas as something that's powerful or offers greater control or is going to make your food taste better. And so that's what we're up against in a lot of instances is just helping people understand that induction offers similar things, like kind of Ram was saying. It offers control, it offers a lot of the performance that we're looking for when it comes to things like that, and just overcoming a lot of those preconceived notions that are kind of generational almost because of so much marketing that's been delivered to consumers.
Yeah. I mean, wait until those commercial walks go in, and then we can't have generational. We're going to be like, guess what? This wasn't cooked on an open flame anymore. It's being cooked on an all electric wok. So taking a step away from just the general barriers, we discuss the building sector decarbonization. When we discuss it, it's really crucial that we think about equity. And I know we say this word a lot, but really meeting those that would benefit the most. This is how I defined it, where they are, right? So how do we talk about these barriers, and how do we make sure that those in residential homes, low, moderate income, marginalized communities are able to electrify their kitchens? And I know you talked about it a little bit earlier, but just want to bring it home around how that relates to equity. Either of you.
Sure. I mean, I can speak to the equity piece in terms of things like the barriers that people who maybe have financial barriers to electrification or are renters and don't have control. A lot of the things that we're asking people to do in many cases are part of things like a remodel that they're already doing, or they require people to go out and spend money. And so in order to equitably electrify kitchens, we need to both take into account the financial barriers that people face and meet that with financial incentives that helps eliminate those barriers to make it accessible for people. We need to meet people where they are in terms of education and providing education in spaces that they're in, not assuming that as we're talking in our energy circles or our decarbonization circles, that we're going into communities and creating experiences for people to understand really what's happening and why we're doing it. And then also the equity piece is at the same time we're talking about energy and what we can do to transition away from gas. We're also speaking to the health and safety side of kitchen electrification. That's super, super vital because maybe some people are aware, but when you cook with gas, you release harmful chemicals into your kitchen. And for people who maybe don't have adequate ventilation or don't know to use it, they're exposing themselves to things that they don't even know. And so, addressing equity has a billion different kind of thumbs in terms of kitchen electrification.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd add one more thing, right? Which is, I mean, when we talk about equitable decarbonization, part of it is also making it affordable, right? So when we think about induction cooktops, technology advances have brought down their cost by a factor of 4 or 5 in the last, I would say, 6-7 years, right? So that's where technology comes into play, or technology innovation comes into play, which is making things more affordable so that it's not just a high-end residential luxury good, right? How do you make it accessible to everyone? Another aspect is for many service employees who work in restaurants, right? To Noah's point, we could improve indoor air quality benefits, but it also has comfort benefits. You're not working in a kitchen that's as hot anymore because you don't have as much open flame and radiating heat everywhere, right? So there's some lot of those benefits too that come from electric cooking and induction cooking. There's still some work to be done on having cookware that's universally compatible with induction cooking. So that's an area that we are working on in terms of development and research. But overall, I think by bringing down the cost and improving the indoor health benefits, you're making the technology more equitable.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really good point too that is related to which we probably should talk a little bit more about, is a little bit about kind of the efficiencies behind it. Ram mentioned it. When we have gas stoves on, the heat is actually dissipating through the home. And so by using electric, we're just using our electricity and our energy in a better way. I know Noah probably knows even more about induction versus electric cooktops. If you wanted to speak a little bit to that too.
Sure. I mean, the efficiency of induction is one of the hallmarks of the technology, and it's the reason that it makes sense for a lot of instances and a lot of applications, especially on the commercial side. Induction can range in efficiency from 80 to 90%. I was even looking yesterday at a commercial model that has rated at 94% efficiency. And this is compared to anywhere from like 60 to 70%, maybe even 75 when it comes to like electric resistance. And then when we talk about gas cooking, it ranges pretty widely between anywhere from like 30 to 50%, depending on the unit or the model. And so in terms of energy efficiency, it becomes a really great option for induction to be the shining star that it needs to be. And in a lot of cases, the efficiency in the technology, it makes it something that in terms of operational cost becomes a lot more attractive.
Great. So I think we're going to go back to this because we got a question. We got our listeners involved. They would like Noah or Ram. There's big pushback in our city from the restaurant industry. And I know we talked about this earlier. Do you have any professional chefs or restaurant managers that speak to electrification in the professional kitchen? And who are they, I guess? Or examples, maybe.
Yeah, I would be happy to speak to it. So BDC, we do a lot of work directly with the food service community and chefs we call them our induction super fans, or even our chef influencers, because in a lot of cases, what they're doing is going out and preaching about this, preaching about the all electric kitchen, preaching about induction, which is, from our perspective, which is wonderful because, we as energy people can say it, but if somebody who uses it every day and has that culinary background can also see the benefits and want to speak about it, we're like thrilled. So we have plenty in our network that are doing it every day. We actually brought on one of the most prominent chefs who's speaking about this every day, Chef Rochelle Boucher, to our team recently, because kitchens is a big priority for us. Even last week, we met a chef in San Francisco who is a 3-star Michelin chef. His name is Chef Claude Leitohic. I probably said it incorrectly, but we learned that in 2016 in San Francisco, he fought to build back his 6-story restaurant to be all electric. And to include induction and not be gas. So there's tons in the community that are very pro-electric, pro-induction because it just works really well. And so we're super excited about that.
Yeah. Ram, did you want to add anything?
I think as Noah mentioned, right, there are more and more restaurants and chefs who are actually adopting induction, seeing the benefits of induction, right, both for the cooking, the food quality, as well as the indoor environment. At the same time, I think we have to be cognizant that, hey, this is going to be a transition, right? We don't want to mandate or push it too fast, because then you really want people to buy into it for its benefits, not feel forced to use it. So it's a balance, but I think we'll get there as we get more and more proponents coming on the induction train.
Yeah, great. So we've talked about kind of the challenges of commercial kitchen electrification. We've talked about the restaurant industry. We've talked about meeting, those who may find this furthest out of reach. But then there's a whole other segment of us that maybe just within reach. Maybe we're trying to work with our partners on a kitchen renovation. Not going to name names, might be me. And what is their first step? There is a lot of programs. There's a lot of buzz coming out of the federal government too. How do those curious enough that want to make that step, where do they go first to electrify their kitchen? Ram, do you want to start?
So, I'm actually going to point to some really interesting new programs like lending libraries that exist. One example I'll throw out is Sonoma Clean Power in Northern California has a lending library where they'll actually lend an induction cooktop that you can try out for a couple of weeks, right? Or you can go to Costco or any of the retailers and you'll be able to buy a $60, $70 induction cooktop, which is a one burner or not. We shouldn't call it a burner, one unit cooktop, right? And they can try it out. And I think as they try it out, they'll find what they like about it, how they want to adopt it. And then after that, it's just going out and finding the units, shopping for it. It's not like 3 years ago where you had like 2 cooktops in the market. Now you have a whole range. and they can go select it just like they do any normal cooktop.
Love it. Noah?
Yeah, I mean, the first step that I would recommend is to visit switchison.org/cooking, which is our consumer campaign that educates people on whole building electrification. But we have really, really great resources on that website, including a step-by-step guide on how to electrify your kitchen. So in my mind, that's like, if you're looking to start there. And it's a step-by-step guide, including things that people should consider when they're electrifying their kitchen. It includes things like what appliances to look at, how to think about installing into your kitchen, how to think about electrification in terms of the electrical itself. So service panel availability, wiring, and then things like cookware. And then on switchison.org, we also have incentives that are compiled there and programs like Ram was mentioning. So we have at incentives.switchison.com, it's a searchable tool by zip code that you can look for available incentives and programs like lending programs to see if there's one close to you or in your area.
All right. And I mean, I kind of want to close us out too right before we close out, we do want to talk a little bit about ARRA and the infrastructure and, oh my gosh, not infrastructure, Inflation Reduction Act. I'm so sorry. So Noah, I see that Ram is like, he might have been kicked out. I see him spinning, but Noah, why don't you really quickly, out of hundreds of pages, summarize it for why it's important, at least for us doing kitchen electrification.
Sure. Well, the Inflation Reduction Act is obviously it's a massive bill that has so much in it for buildings and for everything. But in terms of kitchen electrification, it's big for consumers, and the fact that we're getting funding that's going to be available directly to consumers to help them electrify their kitchens. One particular program is the High Efficiency Electric Home Rebate Program, which provides money through states directly to consumers for them to electrify. And this includes up to $840 for people to buy electric cooktops and ranges. So, for example, one of the lowest cost induction ranges is about $1,000 when it's on sale, or $1,100. So that brings that just over $200, which is an insane idea that we're getting able to buy appliances for that much. But it also includes money for electrical, up to $4,000 for people to electrify or to upgrade their electric service panels, and additionally up to $2,500 for people to make any electrical wiring improvements that they need if they're to electrify their home. But that money is available, obviously, for electrifying your kitchen as well. But it's a super, super exciting time in terms of this, because it's federal funding for the first time to help people have kitchen electrification be more accessible to them. So it's really, really exciting stuff.
I know, we're excited. So we only had 35 minutes or 30 minutes really with the two of you. So I just want to, quickly recap for those that have been listening. We've heard about what is kitchen electrification and what it means to transition from gas. We've heard that there's clearly some very exciting stuff that Ram's team at the BTO is doing to really meet, consumers being us, consumers being commercial buildings and commercial kitchens, where they are, to bring this new technology to a place where, like he said, was a great example with the thermostat, where it's just like a natural transition, right? And I love both of you have really mentioned what it means. If you can't just convince someone to go change their cooktop, why don't you try a portable one? And that there are a lot of programs and opportunities happening out there to try this technology out. And also, most exciting, the ARRA bill has passed, and this is going to be an incentive for a lot of us to go forward and electrify and use those rebates. Very quickly now, I know Ram is trying to sign in. Noah, in 1 minute or less, what is your vision for kitchen electrification?
Sure. I mean, so my vision for the kitchen electrification movement, which is what we often refer to it as, because it's this massive multi-industry push towards electrification of kitchens, is that at the core of it, recognizing that it's a market, and that market needs to enable consumers to electrify, but it's ultimately driven by consumer demand and consumer interest in products like these. And so my vision ultimately is that everyone knows why we're electrifying or why we're trying to move away from gas. They know why it's beneficial, but then they also know what resources are available to them to make it happen. Because it's one thing to teach people about this idea, another thing to give them things that they can actually do. But then if they can put that together and know, like, when it's my time, maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's next year, when they're ready to electrify, they know how to get it done. That's my vision. I would love to see that be the reality.
I love it. And Ram, in 1 minute or less, to put you on the spot, what is your vision for the future of kitchen electrification? I'm trying to. Oh, he signed off. He just hopes he doesn't even have to talk about it because everyone will have electrified their kitchen. Maybe that's what the vision is.
Absolutely. So optimistic.
I got a ping in that Ram is having some technical difficulties, but we are at time. So I just want to thank our guests, Noah and Ram, for joining us today. Again, if folks enjoyed this episode, please check out Buildings Hub, atlasbuildingshub.com to learn more, and you can rewatch this episode and share it with your networks. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Ram, and thank you, Noah.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to chat.
Yeah. Bye.